Rick, how are you?
I'm doing well, Keith. How are you?
Good, man. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I'm enjoying your, I don't know if you guys can see it, this is purple. It's really flattering.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it, man.
I was hoping you had a lid that goes with it. Though.
No, I don't.
So I'm kind of getting blind off of that reflection.
I know, right? No, I keep it cut nice and tight. So it does exactly that.
Cool.
Yeah, so what's today's topic?
Oh yeah, so today I thought we'd talk about something that, is kind of frivolous in a way, and I suppose since we're so close to Christmas here in August, that we should bring it up, and that's about
They're real close.
the problem with pursuing pleasure. And the reason I was saying Christmas, because when I think of pursuing pleasure, I guess the short thing that I always do, the short-term pursuit of pleasure, usually for me, has to do with an urge to buy things.
Like gift giving.
Well, gift taking for myself.
Okay.
No, thanks. Skip the giving. You are way ahead of me. No, I was thinking of going out and getting a whole new wardrobe when I did that.
Right.
But seriously, I was thinking, okay, why am I making a list of consumer goods that I want when I don't need a damn thing? I have a full closet. My life is perfect. It's overflowing with bounty. Yet here I am making a decision that I want to go to Scottsdale Fashion Square this afternoon and buy some new pants.
Right.
Like, will that make me happy? What do you think?
Yeah, I know. I don't think so. I don't think there's anything wrong with buying things, as long as there's no attachment to it, no ego. So a good test for me is if I buy a new suit and I'm getting out of the car, and I snag it and it rips a big tear in the trousers. Am I going to have any kind of pain and suffering over it? If the answer is yes, then I'm not doing the practice very well. I got to be able to let that stuff go.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
I think about that all the time that I buy something new. If I lost this, misplaced it, would there be a lot of suffering with it? And if I can answer the question like, no, I'm good. If that happens, it happens, and I'm going to be cool with it. If I can answer that question that way, then I think there's no kind of pleasure seeking there. I'm just buying something because I prefer to have something, but my identity isn't tied to it. I've gotten better at that lately. In the past, there was all kinds of suffering, like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. I can't get over it. How did I let that happen? I got to be more careful. I beat myself up over it, and God forbid if somebody else did it. So that's how I answer that question.
I was wondering too, how do you deal with like human emotions that we all have, human drives that we all have that are pleasurable, like having a great meal? How do we prevent ourselves from going over and having 15 desserts instead of just the usual 2? Or how do we manage to stay in a relationship sexually and not pursue sex outside of a committed relationship?
I knew you were going to bring that one. That's in my Achilles heel. We'll keep it real here, folks.
Well, I'm asking because I need the help, right? I think all of us struggle with that, but the problem with pursuing pleasure is always that it's number one, short term, always number two, that it's going to be satisfying, but the satisfaction never lasts. In order for it to last, it has to be done again and again and again and again, and pretty soon you're on this circle where you're constantly looking to fulfill that sensual pleasure, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think for me, pleasure seeking has been pretty disciplined in it.
Mm-hmm.
In most areas of my life, when it came to want to stay in bed because that feels great versus getting up early in the morning to go and do something good for my physical self and my emotional and mental space. So that was pretty easy, saying no to certain foods because they weren't aligned with what I have for my health goals. That's been easy. But that other one that you said, that latter, that's been the one that has been my minefield for a lot of years. And that is, not being faithful in relationships and seeking pleasure outside of the relationship, both physical and emotional. And it's cost me a lot. It really has. It cost me a lot of uh, goodwill with other people, hurting myself. And a lot of times, consciously, I'm aware of the cost and the impact of not being faithful. But the pull was so strong that I would almost not even allow myself to think about the consequences or think about the cost of certain behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, the suffering became too great that I could ignore it. I could not ignore it anymore.
Yeah, that's what I think we all end up doing when we're pursuing things. Like in my case, excessive material possessions ran me for a long time. In your case with the sex, the idea that the stimulation was so strong that you couldn't control it almost. I think both of us came to the same conclusion, and that is that merry-go-round of always wanting and never being satiated and having to do it again and again and again causes so much suffering personally,
Yes.
that you have to get off that merry-go-round. It's not just a matter of tweaking it, you got to get off it, because there's another way of dealing with life that's so much more fulfilling and so much more rewarding, and so little suffering is involved in making that choice, once the choice is made.
Exactly. And I didn't feel like at the time that that it was a big problem, because the ego can help you ignore all of the collateral damage around you when you're engaged in pleasure seeking. So I didn't feel like that, and I really didn't feel like at the time that that it was a big dysfunction. I just felt like this is how I feel right now. This is what I want to do, and I was not present to the cost of it until, in most cases, after the behavior had already taken place. And so I got to the point to where being productive and producing results at that time was still very important to me. And I was just plain old ineffective, or not as effective as I used to be, because I would be pursuing another relationship or something like that, and that would cut into my sleep. And if I don't get enough sleep, and I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't have this external stimulant to get me going. So if I didn't have enough sleep, the next day was a wash. I get done just what I needed to, and my life purpose of serving others requires me to be, lights out and be on all the time, which is what I enjoy. And I just wouldn't have the energy for it to operate at just a click higher than what's normal for me. And sleep allows me to restore myself, rejuvenate myself, so that I can give more, so I can show up more present. And I wasn't able to do that. So I started noticing that. And eventually I stopped just hanging on and treading water to where I started to become submerged. And it just became too great for me that I had to change. And once I accepted that fact, that the cost was too great for what I wanted for my life, required me to change behavior. Once I accepted that, the urge was gone.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
It blew me away, because I thought it was going to be something that I was going to be stricken with for the rest of my life. I thought this is going to be the battle for the rest of my life, to have to deal and fight against this urge. Some people may relate to it with food or with some kind of alcohol or drug addiction. And for me, at least for me, this particular thing, once I accepted that I wanted something different, and I started to align myself with practices that were going to produce different behaviors so I could have peace in my life, as soon as I did that, the urge was gone.
Yeah. Well, that shows you what kind of motivation that you had to get rid of that suffering. And it also shows you how much work you had done on yourself to monitor and understand what the role that played in your life and how it was dysfunctional, getting in the way of what you really wanted. I think for me, that's a similar story, that the suffering gets to be so great that you have to have leverage of that suffering to get you on to the next place. And I don't think either one of us are arguing that sensual pleasure is bad, or that great food is bad, or buying things is necessarily bad. It's the idea that the excess of it that starts to run your life means that you're going to have to get bigger and bigger hits of whatever it is that's causing you to act this way in order for you to be satisfied, and eventually you'll never be satisfied with that. I mean, it's like in my case with the material stuff, it's like a cliche where people go out and they fill self-storage with stuff that's perfectly good, or they fill their garage with 2 garages with stuff that they could give away and have somebody else use, or they have 1 car they need 2, they have 2 they need 3, they have a boat they need. I mean, it's endless. You never stop it. So if you get to the point where you realize that it's running you and it's interfering with what you really want out of life, which I think for all of us is a sense of inner peace,
Right.
a sense of calmness, a sense of service to others, a sense of gratitude, and a sense of loving and being loved, that way will not help. You know, if for me in my head, one way that prevented me from doing this is I kept thinking to myself, I'm buying this because it makes me feel powerful. I have a sense that I have a control over that transaction. Now I've got this valuable thing. And once I put it in that category, I thought, well, hell, I don't need that. I feel pretty okay without having to buy things to feel like I have power
Right.
in my life. So once I translated into that and figured out what was underneath it, like with food as another example, what was underneath food was the idea of satisfying a craving that I couldn't reach in other ways. Maybe it was I couldn't be as fit as I wanted, I couldn't be as wealthy as I wanted, I couldn't be, these were lacks that I was trying to fill with food. And so once I got that, then it was easy to pull back and say, this is just a symptom of some deeper need. And the deeper need is where the work needs to be done.
Absolutely.
The deeper need is what you need to look at and figure out what strategies that are healthy that can get you there.
Yeah, Dr. Amit Sood, in the Mayo Clinic Guide, the author of the Mayo Clinic Guide to Stress-Free Living, talks about there are 3 things that we attend to as human beings, and the first is fear, the second is pleasure, and the third is novelty.
Wow.
And so once I started to understand, like, okay, my mind is making me become anxious, or I'm engaged in this obsessive thinking, you know, because 99% of all our thoughts are repetitive. What you thought about, what you think about today is what you thought about yesterday, last year. In some people's case, 10, 20 years. It's the same conversation, nothing new here. Once I get the guy that, oh my God, I'm letting fear, thought-based fear control my life, I started to observe the thought and find out how untrue most of it is. And then the other thing was pleasure seeking. I don't like the idea of something externally controlling me.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was doing.
Whether
it was food, or I got to wear a new outfit today because people are going to be looking at me. You know, kids are going back to school here in Arizona this week, and you know, I remember as a kid or as an adult going into a new job, I got to have a new outfit for this or that, and you know, your entire energy is tied up in that. And there's nothing wrong with having a new article of clothing in your wardrobe. Nothing wrong with that.
If that's what it's about.
If that's what it's about. But it's about something else, how people are going to see me, how I show up, how what they're going to think about what I wear. You know, all that stuff is just suffering. And so that was external to me. And then novelty is that how it showed up for me in a relationship. I needed someone else to think that I was attractive or desirable, again, outside of me. That's where the dead ends are. That's where the suffering is. And once I understood that and accepted that I was going to do what was necessary to cultivate inner peace, everything changed. Mm-hmm. And again, the shackles of, you know, responding or reacting to fear, pleasure, and novelty just completely changed. And then I received and experienced so much peace around those things.
Just the fact that you recognize that there are 3 things like that: fear, and
pleasure, and novelty.
Novelty and pleasure. All of those things we fail to even look at. We don't even think of them. I think we just are living our lives mindlessly often, and we're
Right.
going through the motions. So that leads me to another consideration about always monitoring and being aware of what the present moment is indicating. So right now we're in this studio full of all of these people, yet we're still very, very calm, and we're still not having any issues about police coming to the door and dragging us out, so we don't have that fear. And that the idea is that the present moment is really all you have, and if those fears aren't real right now, then they're not real.
They're not real.
Wait until they're real before you get crazy about it. Right?
Freaking out, worked up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'll give you an example of that. Just happened yesterday. I left my keys, and I only have well, I have 5 keys on my key ring. 2 of them I don't have replacements for. One is my mailbox key, and another is an old safe in my office that I keep client checks and other things that are important. And I lost these keys at Whole Foods. And I lost them about 6 o'clock at night. I couldn't find them. And then I went through all of the baskets at Whole Foods by hand several times until they closed at 8 o'clock. The keys didn't show up. I didn't know what to do. I was really panicked. I was really fearful that my whole world was going to come down. I was going to be sued for malpractice because I couldn't get in the safe. My mailbox would,
the mind is running.
Yeah.
Creating worst case scenarios.
Oh yeah,
it's doomsday.
Yeah, I lost my law license already 3 times last night in my head, right? But that's foolish. It's foolishness thinking. And of course, here was the happy ending. I got a call from. I have a little tag. I'm a member of a club up there, and the club called me, and the guy who found the keys called the club and said, "Hey, do you know who this dude is?" And they called me and said, "He's got your keys." So happy ending. But the point was, until from 6 o'clock last night until a couple of hours ago, I was going through this nonsense because I wasn't being mindful of the present moment. I think the appropriate response would have been, I've got an issue with this, I'm going to do everything I can to solve it. I'm going to monitor Whole Foods, I'm going to be calling whoever I can call at Whole Foods to make sure that they haven't discovered it. I'm going to set in motion the replacement of the key, I'll get a locksmith. Those are the ways that you can actually deal with the problem instead of fantasizing about all this other nonsense. Okay, translate that into what happens with a sexual interest or a overeating interest, or me wanting to buy a $5,000 cashmere shirt or something goofy like that. When you look at what you need right now in this moment, none of that is present. None of that. You have a need for whatever, and you're missing the enjoyability that we're exchanging right now, the camaraderie that we're exchanging right now, or our conversation that we know is being listened to by others. That's pleasurable. That's enough. That's it right now. You don't have to go five steps down the road and say, that's not enough, I need to be universally worshipped, or I need a fudge sundae, or none of that. When you look at it that way, you see how just absolutely ridiculous it is. So I think part of the way that you get a handle on this is you realize first that suffering is causing an issue in your life that prevents you from being happy and prevents you from getting what you really want, which is love.
Yes.
And then secondly, that you're mindful that none of the things that you think you need right now, you need. You don't.
Not in this moment.
You don't need it in this moment. And if you don't need it in this moment, you probably don't in the next, and you probably don't ever.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's the key, is just, rooting yourself in the present moment, and when those thoughts come up, to observe them, just become aware that they're just thoughts. And when I did that, it changed everything, because in that moment you feel like you gotta have it. It's like binge watching a program that's on, on television or Netflix or some of the others. You binge watch it, and the next episode comes up, and without even thinking, you're like, I gotta watch the next one. No. It'll be there next year. The episode, but so it cuts into your sleep. You know what I'm saying? like which is going to make you more effective tomorrow.
Yes.
Or man, you know what? I got to go out and I got to respond to this romantic opportunity. No, you don't. You don't. Just be like, but the mind tells you it's fleeting. You got to do it now. I've got to eat the rest of this cake. I don't know when I'll be able to have it. I've got to take one more drink. I don't know. No, you don't.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I remember Wayne Dyer had a program years ago that was about that, and he was talking about some guy that he was counseling, and he said this guy wanted to quit smoking, and so Dyer said, "I'll tell you what, I'll teach you how to quit smoking in one session." He said, "Oh, Doc, I've been through everything. I've had the patches. I've been through counseling.
Hypnosis.
I have nothing works. No, you can't do it in one sitting." And he said, one sitting, come on back. Well, I'll show you what to do. So they arrange this time and place, they meet, and Wayne says, here's what you need to do to stop smoking. Don't put cigarettes in your mouth. And I'm sure he got a big bill, too.
Brilliant. That's it.
And it's easier not to do something than to do something.
Yeah, that's right. And obsess about it.
Yeah, but the guy said back to him, but Dr. Dyer, what about my urge? I have this urge to smoke. And he said, there's no urge. Now, in nicotine, there probably is.
Right.
But with the idea of having this need to have food or to have possessions or to have sex, those are urges that are confined within a normal limit, and the excess beyond that is your own head.
Yeah, exactly. It's a story that you
It's a
create
story.
about it.
Yeah, so if you can create it, you can dissolve it.
Exactly.
And it's just that you don't want to because it feels so good.
It feels so good. But once you get that there is some, man, you become aware of the thought, you can also become aware of the impact or cost
That's the
of
problem.
not having balance or having a healthy relationship with the pleasure seeking.
If you get your butt kicked enough when you think it's feeling so good, you'll realize that it ain't so good for you.
I totally agree. Rick, thanks for the show.
Hey, I love you, man.
I love you too, man.
Adios.
Thank you.